opinion, if you're not patient, then it's not going to work. Look at what they're supposed to do and what they're actually doing.
Hello, and welcome to the latest episode in Leadership Blueprint. If you've not already subscribed to the channel, please do, and do look back on some of the previous episodes. There's some fantastic people we've spoken to so far, and today's no exception. Today we're speaking with Cristian Candea. With over 2 decades of experience within strategy, growth, customer retention for the industrial catering giant Sodexo, Cristian really does know a lot about how to build successful teams. And so I think he's going to be a really great person today to delve further into this. A little bit more on Cristian. He's currently based in Switzerland in a senior management board position, but he has worked across a number of countries in Europe and further afield. So he's got some great insight on different personalities, different ways of working, and I think that's going to be a really interesting insight for today. So first off, Cristian, thanks so much for joining us. The thing I was really interested to no, thank you. And kind of what I really wanted to jump into right off the bat was, I think, just trying to explore a little bit of the passion that got you to where you are, because from an education background, you started off on business administration, but all of your career has been very people focused, from customer to internal stakeholders to team growth. And so I think it would just be a great place to start and just understand more. How did you unlock that passion for people, and how did the journey kind of take place? Because I think it's a really interesting one, and I'd love you to share a bit more with the listeners. So again, thanks for joining us, and kind of over to you for that one.
Thank you. Well, it's an interesting story, because as you said, I did start with business management, but with a preference for, let's call it a preference for accounting and accounting software. So that was my secondary degree, let's call it like that. And after finishing the university, I realized I don't like accounting at all. So I thought, okay, what do I do next? Because at that time, we're talking about the beginning of the 2000s. So I finished 2002, 2003. So
it's a bit of a tech growth going on as well, sort of globally as well, similar to now. So yeah, exciting time to It
was starting. I mean, we used to do the balance on paper when I started doing accounting. I did some accounting also, so I cannot say I built my opinion based on experience.
Yeah.
So at that time, beginning of the 2000s, honestly, I was looking for something else.
Yeah.
But you're in your early 20s, how I was at that time. You don't actually know what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are. So I got to, and this was just by coincidence, I got to work for Sodexo. Sodexo has two different branches. It used to have 2 different branches. One was the meal voucher branch, and then the second one is the corporate services one. Okay. Where I ended up after about 7 or 8 years. So the meal voucher side was also a good start as a career. And actually, that's where I realized that I like working with people. I like, developing things.
Yeah.
Because I started as a guy that was just printing out the meal vouchers. This was a long time ago, different technology. And then ended up as being the head of the printing part of Sodexo. So like the manager of operations, let's call it like that.
Okay.
But getting there was not easy. It was certainly not, it was fun. I'm not saying it wasn't fun. It wasn't easy, and sometimes it involved maybe 16, 18 hours work days to be able to get things done. But, and basically that's when something clicked. At one point, something clicked when I saw that whatever I was discussing with my team and what we were trying to implement new things and make things more efficient. And, when you see the results,
Yeah.
because you see the results, you see that, okay, it took me 3 days up until 2 months ago to get this done. And now it takes me 6 hours. So clearly an improvement. So all the talks, all the, the discussions, even the fights, sometimes, those can be also constructive.
Yeah, as long as it's constructive, it's all okay. That can sometimes be quite positive. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, but you have to learn. You have to learn how to take them, because people don't usually fight with you because they don't want to work. They fight with you usually because maybe they have a better idea, or you're not, and you're not allowing them to express it, or things like that. That's why it maybe steps up to what you would call a fight. No punches were thrown. No worries.
Well, I don't know. A few words over over a board table or something. Yeah, that kind of thing. We know, and I think, the bit I would give the analogy of is, try and have an argument with somebody when do you have an argument with somebody when you don't feel you're being heard, and but when you are, it's just a discussion of two different points. And I think that's, as you're saying there, it's getting that communication piece, and that's kind of what I wanted to kind of move and ask on there is as I said at the start, you've dealt with people, different locations, different cultures, nationalities.
Wait, so to finish the story, to give you the story on how I got to Sodexo Corporate Services. So basically, at one point, 2009, I think, the meal voucher branch in the city where I was working closed. And the option that I got was to take over a site or a location for corporate services, or as it was called then, facility management. So that's how I got into this branch of Sodexo. Of course, based on my activity in the other branch. I mean, people know each other, of course, same company in the end. So that's how I got to, and my first job was, at that time it was called plant facility manager. And I was 30, something like that. Quite a big title for me at that point, to be honest. So that's how I got into Sodexo, in the today Sodexo, the corporate services Sodexo. That was my first contact with corporate services, with facility management, with things like that. And then, you start to learn and see what's happening. So I'll let you ask your question now.
I'm sorry. So, as I was saying, it was interesting to see. Obviously, you mentioned at the start, you've worked across a number of locations. You've, within the same business, transitioned into the other part, as you said. How have you seen building those relationships with people, different locations, nationalities, different skill sets? I think that's always interesting to see. What was the consistent things that worked, and what were the real changes that you needed to learn and adapt yourself to deal with those different locations, and even physically different parts of the business, and how they would operate and how they would consider success, how they would measure it?
So I would say the first thing that I noticed is you have to be aware of the cultural background. So that is something that really needs to be in the back of your mind wherever you go, because there are certain types of countries or cultures that maybe are more defensive, and I've seen some of them that are more on the offensive, let's call it like that. And I was in the beginning, I was trying to find a way to connect. And of course, in the beginning, it was much easier to connect to Eastern European people, because I come from Romania, and countries like the Czech Republic, like Bulgaria, like Poland, they are not the same, but very close culturally.
Yep.
Second thing that I've noticed is language, but that's not such a big factor in these countries. I didn't see it as as a hindrance, to be honest. They expect you to know English, and that's it. They don't expect most of the people to speak Polish, for example.
Yeah.
Same way as I don't expect anyone that comes to work with me, if I'm in Romania, to speak Romanian. It's a waste of time, to be honest. And English, English, we need to have a common language. But culture is a very important factor. And I've seen it now in all the countries that I've been to and worked with. It's really important to be aware of where they're coming from, what their background is as a country, as a culture.
Were there any specific examples of where that sort of knowledge grew faster, i.e., I experienced something challenging, but came out the other end with a great result, and actually, I'm so glad it didn't go smoothly because I learned so much more, and then went into future situations and just performed so much better. So, i.e., were there key things that stood out in your learning that, as a leader, that kind of accelerated that journey?
Yeah, but that was a personal thing. So what happened was I was still in Romania at that time, and basically there was a shift in Sodexo's leadership. So one CEO left, another one came in, different mentality, different strategies. And at that point, and so what I'm saying is I learned this on myself and then applied it to other situations. What happened was I was trying to get a new position within Sodexo, and I made a very strong case for it and prepared that email and sent it to my, at that time, to my superior. But the email was, I don't want to say it was Romanian, but it was quite direct, which is the way that I was used to work in Romania. So we're usually direct. We don't waste time. We don't do the polite things like, how are you? Things like that. So the email was, factually, it was perfect. The tone in that email was not the tone that you were supposed to use with one of your superiors.
Okay.
And basically what he replied to me after about 2 days, and he said, okay, I understand, you make perfect sense. Can you please read that email again? And can you please try to read it from my point of view as your superior?
Yeah.
And I did, and he was right. The facts could have stayed, the tone should be, he was French, so we need to have that clear. I was Romanian, he was French. And again, different cultures. So that's when something also clicked with me, and I said, okay, so you need, depending on what you do, you need to adapt to the person that is sitting across you. Yeah. It doesn't matter if he's your superior or not.
Yeah, and I think it's very important. It shows a lot of. I think what's refreshing about that is I think sometimes people look at people further in their career and assume that they must have just known this stuff or that they were told it straight away. But I think it's refreshing to share that and thank you. And again, people hearing this is if you learn by your mistakes, if you take in the feedback, and I think that's something which over the last few episodes we've been having. The people that take that feedback on are the ones that really do develop more themselves and then are able to lead by example and things. So I mean, that's really good to hear. And then we mentioned
I did not get the job, by the way. I did not get the job. So he told me, you make a good case, you're not getting the job. I got others. That wasn't the problem, but I did not get the job I was gunning for.
Hey, you can't win them all. I mean, that's an important thing.
Exactly.
And B, look, I think it's, we've all seen that where the thing you thought was right probably wasn't, or maybe was part of the journey to get you where you want to be. And, you know, I think on reflection, if you had taken that job, would you be where you are today? You know, potentially not. Like, when I was younger, I had a big sports injury, which meant I left a job, long story short. And actually, if I hadn't got the sports injury, which at the time was distressing, I might still be in my hometown, working in the same company and doing all that stuff. But, you know, a whole sort of international journey came off the back of something that at the time felt very, very stressful, and you know, all the world's ending and all that other stuff. So yeah, it's self-reflection, I think's a big thing there, you know, what we're talking about. And in thinking of self-reflection, I'm keen to see, when you move from one part of the business to the other, as you mentioned, you know, that's starts to focus more on driving operational excellence. So there's a kind of a shift in mindset. And how did you make that? How did you get up to speed with that quickly? So you've gone from one side to the other. There's a different set of expectations on you. How did you not, you know, yes, we're talking about learning from mistakes as well, but how did you make that transition, and how could you have done it even better? You know, reflecting back, if somebody had to make that transition, or if somebody is focusing on this transformation, operational excellence, these are key things that you would kind of impart onto them. What might that reflection look like?
I mean, I will tell you honestly, the transition was certainly not easy. And dealing with a client every single day that has demands from you every single day was quite overwhelming for the first few months. And as you said earlier, you have to do it. It's not something that you get 5 years to adjust to. So you need to be on your top game as soon as possible. I mean, I'm lucky. My first client was Procter & Gamble. And at that time, the contract that Sodexo had with them was you could call it a learning contract. So they were still teaching us things about facility management, So, of course, for me, in the beginning, it felt like they were controlling us, or they were controlling me. But once you get over that and you understand what they're doing, there's a really big chance that you're going to learn, because they did have a lot more experience than us in the beginning. So they were basically my teacher. For the first, let's say, 2 or 3 years of my career, that's where I basically developed and learned what it means to deal with a client. How do you bring forth operational excellence? How do you make sure that a client is happy, even if you haven't been able to deliver everything that they've asked for?
Yeah, even doing a good job, you may not always deliver what they want. So, but how do you keep them happy? I think that's a skill in itself, for sure. Without giving away any state secrets or anything, can you kind of share maybe, you know, what was one of the most surprising or challenging situations that you faced over the career? You know, you don't even have to say the client name or anything, but just, you know, in case of confidentiality or anything. But I'm always intrigued on kind of something that was really surprising, that, you know what, I look back on it and laugh almost, but I learned so much from it for these reasons. Or I thought the client was wanting XYZ, but actually they were way more focused on ABC. Is there one or two examples like that you could share with us, just to kind of give a bit of learnings and insights and in some of that takeaway that you've had over the career?
I mean, one of the biggest ones I would say was coming here to Switzerland.
Okay.
And it was, again, different culture. And just as a bit of a background, when you call someone here in Switzerland, you have to ask them how they are, and they're actually going to answer you. So they won't just reply with, "Fine, how are you?" They're actually going to tell you how they are.
Okay.
And it's something that, to me, in the beginning was very strange. And didn't seem effective. But it's something that I've learned here, that it is important. It also builds trust, and it also establishes a connection between the two people talking. So this coming here was a bit of a shock, because I knew some German, and just to be clear, people in Romania don't expect someone when he comes there to speak Romanian. People do expect you to speak German when you come to work in Switzerland, especially in the area where I was, or where I started. So I did have some German knowledge. Of course, it's a lot better now over the years. And I think the first positive impact that I was able to make was that I tried. So I was trying to communicate with them in their native language every single day. So that was difficult for the first, let's say, 4-6 months, to be able to, because we were discussing also technical things and maintenance, and those German words that are like this long, when you put them on paper. Yeah, it was a difficult journey. That was one.
Yeah. Okay.
Another one I have was, we were doing an audit for a business in Poland, for a Sodexo business in Poland, which wasn't performing. And of course, it's not performing. You have to go in, you have to look at the great picture. Okay, generally it's not performing, but then you have to go into detail. And then to get the details, you have to talk to the manager of the site. You have to talk to his people. You have to talk to the restaurant manager. You have to talk to a lot of people to get their insights on why. So, and also to get the root cause. Why is it badly performing? And people tend to be more defensive, like I said before, in Eastern European countries. So once you start questioning them, they become more defensive. And this was my first experience outside of Romania. And what I actually realized was, okay, as long as you keep transparency, so you are transparent and continuously explaining them why you're not doing this to fire them, you're not doing this to find someone at fault. You're doing it to find the problem, and then hopefully find a way to solve it.
And so let's delve into that a little bit more. So from a business perspective, if you see something as underperforming, is that just based on financials? Is that based on particular metric outputs? Is it a combination of everything? It's maybe not making what we thought, but the customer's happy, that's fine. Or we're making loads of money, but the customer's really frustrated us for some reason. How do you guys measure that success? And ultimately, when you are looking into those root causes, what were some of the different outcomes that you found that were down to people? And that might be the lack of leadership, that might be not having the right support network process, whatever it might be. But I'm just intrigued to see, is it the financials that set the alarm bells off, and then you start looking for root causes, and what were some of those? Or even if the financials are good, but the customer's upset, etc. So I just kind of seen, chicken and egg, and the answer might be there is no one set answer, but I'm just intrigued to sort of kind of delve a little bit on that, especially from the root cause analysis and financials and the balance that comes with that.
I have examples for both. I have examples for sites that were performing financially outstanding, but the client wasn't happy. I don't think they were unhappy because we were making a lot of money, to be honest. There were other reasons.
Okay.
But yes, it usually is the finances that pull the alarms. Because generally, and I'm speaking now, there are exceptions, but generally, in my experience, if a location or a site is performing badly financially, it usually means that the client is also not happy, or that you are not delivering to the expected level. So they're usually connected. And I'll give you the example again in Poland. This site was performing really bad. I mean, I would think it was a negative margin of 30% or even more on average. So really, really bad. The client wasn't that unhappy. They could have been happier, but so we went in, we did the research, we looked into everything. Okay, you start with finances, but that opens up other questions. Okay, why are we having so much waste in the restaurant, for example? Why is so much unprocessed food thrown away? Why it just brings up, because you go in line by line and then you go deeper and to the next lines, and that's how you see. And I mean, I would love to say it's just a matter of changing suppliers, but it usually isn't. That's one of the reasons, most of the times, but it's just one, and there's multiple ones. It's also about the team. It's also about the restaurant manager in this case, how he handles it, how he schedules, how he makes his plan for that week or for that month. There's a lot of factors that go into it. And this business also had a la carte, which is always, if you don't have an established menu, that always generates more waste. And also had VIP lounges, which basically there you get whatever you want, from caviar to champagne, whatever. So managing all of that, it's also, I mean, in this case, it was also a lack of tools to be able to manage all of that and to have an overview, because if you don't have the overview, you're not really aware of the facts or of the issues. And this was, again, 2014, 15. You're working with tools like Excel and trying to manage sites that is serving in the high times or on season 40,000 people a day.
Okay.
So not having that overview.
Quite demanding, So not enough data to drive some of this, and it's
you know what happens when you lose that control, or when you see that, okay, I'm doing my best, I'm trying my best, and still nothing's happening, nothing's changing. The motivation is gone also after one point. So that's when we came in. That's when I and a few other colleagues came in. And yes, of course, like I said before, people were defensive in the beginning. But once they actually realize that you are there to help, to actually help. So you are there not just to blame someone and then move on. You are there to help, and you will stay there for as long as it's needed until the issue is, well, maybe not resolved, but on its way to being resolved. Then
And I was going to say, do you have specific strategies to build that trust then? Because that definitely seems to be one of your strong suits. A lot of examples you've given so far are getting to the root cause, having a bit of that empathy. But how do you convey that message? Because I'm sure everybody says, well, I go in and I tell them their job's not at fault, but they don't get the same result or output or response. Are there specific strategies that you do, or?
Yeah, I have a very good one.
Some of those?
I have the perfect one: beer. No, but so I need to have this out too. And it's not about drinking. It's about connecting to these people on also personally, so not in the workplace. And that is, I told you, I've been in so many countries. That has been generally has worked in every single country, even Switzerland, where people say Swiss people are cold and it's not true. That has worked here, it worked in Ireland, it worked in every country that I've been. So the connections, establishing that connection is really, really important from my point of view.
Showing you're putting the effort in to truly understand, not just ask a couple of questions on a piece of paper to tick a box, I suppose. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense.
What people have told me, and this is what people have told me, is that because usually if I get involved in something, you can feel it. So I'm not, if I don't get my results or my replies or the information that I need, I'm going to keep at it.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean I'm going to do it in, how can I say, in a bossy way. The idea is we're all part of the same company, or we're all trying to achieve the same goal. So we need to find a way to work together. And this has been, it's also a matter of reading the people around you.
Yeah.
And seeing them face to face.
And do you find that there's a different strategy or a different approach needed for, and I'm sure there is, but still want to ask the question of balancing the client expectation and balancing the employee's expectation? Because obviously they want a certain set of outputs and a certain potentially way of doing things, but then you need to get that. I'm sure you're doing things a certain way. How do you get that balance, and what are some of the key differences that you found between balancing both sides of that equation?
So you mean employees and client?
Yeah, effectively.
That is not, again, it's not something there's a standard way to do it. What I've found is, because sometimes the clients tend to be very demanding. And of course, they also ask for cost reductions and make things more efficient. And usually what I've seen, how that translates to the people that I've worked with, is when they hear efficiency, people tend to think job reduction.
Yeah.
Same reaction when they hear cost reduction. But what I've tried to do, using the experience that I've had and using not just the experience, using colleagues from other countries who have had other experiences, is to show them that the fact that you're becoming more efficient doesn't mean that he's going to have to give up 2 people in his restaurant or 3. And I have a perfect example for that. And this is also about the client. We had a restaurant which was basically delivering about 10,000 portions of food every single day to 6 different locations, so 6 different clients.
Okay.
And Sodexo was trying to implement a software that would manage all of that, meaning that you would put in, okay, I have 10,000 menus, I have 10,000 soups. You get the shopping list, that goes to your supplier, all done automatically. Sounds great.
Okay.
Sounds excellent, because usually you have a guy that sits there with the recipe and calculates everything. Okay, you need, I don't know, 600 kilos of beef, you need 2,000 kilos of pork, you need. This software was supposed to do everything for you.
Yep.
Again, back in the early 2010s. And it would have worked if the recipes for each product, each menu, would have been put in the software correctly. So
human error at the start, yeah.
Whatever you feed it, it's what's going to come out of it. There was that old IT saying, garbage in, garbage out. So, of course, clients were expecting high quality, clients were expecting fast delivery, of course. And the frustration with the employees was that they weren't able to perform at the height that the client wanted them. So then what we did, again, after some fights, after some, let's say, heated discussions, there were two people that spent, I think, roughly 2 years putting in these recipes for each product that we were cooking. Putting them in, maybe correcting some of them that were wrong. So, and after that, yes, after that, that software started doing what it was supposed to. But of course, then the question comes from the restaurant manager. Okay, but now I don't need those two guys that were doing the calculations for the shopping. Well, yes, you still do. You still have to have a quality check. You still have to have, you can still look at delivery to make it more efficient. Pasta was always an issue. It's supposed to be al dente. It's not, because it takes an hour to deliver it to the client. How do you do it? And these two guys didn't lose their jobs in the end. They basically found other ways to add value.
Yeah.
So
ultimately they were given a bit more time, used it more effectively, and ultimately the client got a better outcome. So yeah,
exactly.
It's interesting.
It works, and it's not the only example. Okay, sometimes when the client pushes you for really big cost reductions, then yeah, that might result in some losses of jobs. But usually, if it's just a matter of what they usually ask is 2-3%, that can be achieved with increased efficiency, depending on what you're doing, of course.
Yeah. And so you mentioned there clients wanting to do things, cheaper, looking for efficiencies. Ultimately, I'm sure when it comes to contract renegotiations, they're always, what can I get for more? What can I get for cheaper? Or how do you kind of get that balance of, on the one hand, yes, we're listening to you that we're going to try and do this more efficiently, or on the other hand, yes, we might be able to do it a bit of a discount, but because we're going to do this instead, how would you kind of make them aware there is a fine balance between quality, output, satisfaction, and where is that sweet spot in the middle? Was it more trying to get to the root cause of what the client wants and then suggesting to them, or was there a different type of discussion that you guys would sort of look towards to drive that kind of sweet spot on a renegotiation, as it were?
I mean, it's always a difficult discussion to have, because yes, there will be, in the renegotiation, guaranteed there will be a big issue or a big point regarding cost reduction. I don't think I've ever been in any contract renegotiation where they didn't say anything about the cost.
Yeah.
So yes, it depends on the client. I've known clients that were just focused on that. And as long as you were able to give it, even at the cost of maybe reducing some services or lowering the quality, they were fine with it. Okay. Which then that's the easy way. So that works, both sides are happy, we move on. It's the clients that expect you to keep the same quality or high level of services, but still expect to have at least a 5%, if not a 10% reduction for the next contract. That's where the challenges come in. And personally, me and my team and my colleagues, what we have done, we have tried to look at how the contract has been doing. Usually with Sodexo, contracts were at least 3 years, but usually they would prefer it to be 5, because 5 years gives you enough time to also have efficiencies.
Yeah.
And to really test them out and make sure they work. 3 years is kind of on the limit. So we would look at what has worked, what has not worked, admit your faults. That's been my experience with all the clients. So I cannot think of any client that has used the fact that we've made mistakes against us, honestly. So,
And
yes.
I was going to say, so we've spoke about efficiencies, and we've touched on this, but we haven't directly mentioned it yet. And I'm sure from our discussion before we started, it was something we were talking about. So I'm keen to bring it up and sort of refocus it. Is empowerment must be playing a key role in my leadership, gives them empowerment, which ends up with them liking their job and in creating more efficiencies. That's a very simplistic way of putting it, but what's some of the strategies that you've done regarding empowerment that have led to some of those success stories, that have led to some of those efficiency increases, that have led to people enjoying what they're doing? I think that ultimately is what it gets to. Is, do you have some of the, I mean, I know you do have some of those, but could you share some of those examples?
Yeah, and it's actually it's one of the questions that I always ask myself when stepping into a new role or a new position or a new country. I always try, and this is also a leadership philosophy. First of all, listen. First of all, take over, listen. Listen to what they do, listen to what's going on, and analyze everything. Because usually in my almost 20-year now career, people are demotivated because they are overworked or they do a lot of things that are out of their job description or out of their know-how, let's put it like that. So they're forced to take things on that maybe they're not comfortable with. Some of them are, some of them are not. So what I've tried to do is keeping them motivated is, as one of my ex-employees used to tell me, is you were always appreciated as a manager because you made sure that our back was clear and we had time to actually do our work.
Okay. Yeah.
And when because this company is also huge and there's also a lot of bureaucracy. Of course there is. There has to be. It's a huge corporation. And keeping them out of that bureaucracy. So basically me taking that away from their shoulders.
Being the buffer. Yeah.
Exactly. Being the buffer between them and that bureaucracy is what actually motivated a lot of people that I work with. And that has brought ideas, because when they come to work happily and they have an idea and they know there's always someone there that listens to them. And if the idea is good, it will get implemented, then they will do it again. If they try 2, 3, 4 times and nothing happens, then that's again a big demotivator. So just first of all, and it depends also, is it a new team or are you taking over from someone else? Because that's two different situations. If it's new, then you can hire them yourself, you can build them up yourself, and that's usually it works a lot better. If you're taking over from someone, different mentality, different leadership strategies, probably the other person had. So you need to adapt to them, and of course they need to adapt to you and to your mentality. So that's a challenge.
With an existing team, have you ever taken over a team that was emotionally broken? They just had really bad experiences. How did you build them back up? How did you gain that trust with them?
I did, and that's why I told you before that Switzerland was a rough experience in the beginning, because I took over a team right here in the city where I live, and there was basically no communication between the team managers. I mean, absolutely no communication. Everyone did things by themselves. They were, I wouldn't say scared, but they didn't feel like their opinions would be heard if they would speak. And so I spent the first 6 months in Switzerland just listening to people. Patience is also a very big factor in being a good leader. In my opinion, if you're not patient, then it's not going to work. So just listen, and that's what I did. And, in time, after 2-3 months, okay, I listened to you separately and to you separately. Okay, let's come together in one room and I'll listen to both of you at the same time.
Yeah.
And because the connections were there, they were just broken because of the past, and that's not relevant for this discussion. You just have to rebuild those connections and look at, as I said before, look at what they are supposed to do and what they're actually doing, because that is also a big factor. Because if someone signed up to be a restaurant manager, he for sure does not want to do maintenance.
Yeah. But again, it goes back to your understanding the person. So no, absolutely. And
Yeah.
reflecting back on the knowledge you have now, if you were to kind of have a conversation with a younger you, or you at the start of your career, what would be that one or two sort of biggest life lessons or biggest leadership lessons that you would say, younger me, listen to this. This will make things so much easier if you could just take this on board. I know you've got to go through the experience to get this, but in hindsight, if you were listening, what would those one or two lessons, what would they be?
I think patience is one of the biggest issues that I had when I was younger.
Okay.
Because everything seemed to be fast-paced, so it accelerated your mentality also. So what I would say to my younger self would be, actually, I've actually said this because like I said, I did have issues with even balancing professional life with private life.
Yeah.
Okay. As a manager, sometimes you feel that if you don't do it yourself, no one else is going to do it. And I would say trust more. So to that guy, let's say 15 years ago, I would say trust people more. Make sure that they are performing things that are connected to their competencies, to what they were hired to do, because that's a big issue, not just in this company, it's a big issue in other companies also.
Yeah.
And have patience. Have patience, because if you don't, you'll just end up usually demotivating people if you don't listen to them and listen, of course. Listen, that's everyone needs to connect.
Yeah.
Everyone needs to feel that connection.
That's really powerful. And I think it's building on everything we've been talking about today. And I think it was a great question, because I didn't even think it would do that, but it's tied a lot of things in together very nicely there, because I think it is, like you said, only if you listen and understand can you then have the empathy and the empowerment to help people achieve and feel better and have that trust. So I think it all does tie in very nicely, which is great to hear. So in terms of if you were to kind of look at today's conversation and either things that we've spoken about today or something that we've not mentioned that you would like to kind of finish up as a kind of a takeaway soundbite, as it were, whether that's 1, 2, 3 things, whether that's, people maybe at the start of the career, or people maybe on the client side, or people into the future. I see this being really key. What would be those kind of 1 or 2, 3 sort of soundbite takeaway messages from today? Because I've really enjoyed this. I think we've got some really good insight, but I think I'd really love to kind of get those kind of 3 sort of key soundbites. And like I said, it can be younger you, it could be future you, could be where you see things going. So you can take this whichever way you'd like. But what would those sort of 1, 2, 3 different sort of soundbite key takeaway messages of today be for the audience?
That's a it's a difficult question, but the way I see it, and this is again based on the fact that, for example, I have people that I'm no longer responsible for, and they still contact me after 2 years, and we still talk, and sometimes they even ask for advice.
Yeah.
I've never seen myself as an expert. I've always thought that you can always learn more.
Yeah.
And some key things that we could take is the connection. I still have connection to people that I've told you I haven't worked with in years. We still talk. If we can, we sometimes still meet, but that's a bit more difficult lately. So there's the connection, which is basically, and I do have, if we have time, I do have a really good example on this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
One of my technicians, when I came here in Switzerland, he's Swiss, so like he's really Swiss, 100% Swiss. That's not a bad thing. I'm not saying it as a bad thing. It will make sense a bit later in the story. I think I was here like maybe 2 or 3 days. So he was in charge of the maintenance for one of the buildings that I was managing. And his first question was, of course, after the introduction, after everything was, okay, do you have a technical degree? And I said, no, I've studied finance and business management. And I said, but why? And he said, for me to know how to talk to you when I'm explaining the situation. And I'm explaining it now. So what he meant by that was, I'm not going to bother you with the technical terms or with PSIs or whatever these machines do. I will just explain it to you, of course, a bit more widely.
Talking to your audience. Yeah, talking to your audience.
Exactly. Yeah. So talk to your audience at the level that they understand it. And that developed into a very good relationship between me and him professionally. And he's retired now. And I can say this about him. After he retired, he came and said, Christy, I need to apologize to you. And I told him, why? Well, when you were first introduced to us and they told us that someone else is taking over, and I saw you were so young, and I said, okay, what's this guy doing here? He's just come to Switzerland to make some money, and then he's going to leave a year later. And so that was my opinion in the beginning. And then 4 years later, he came to apologize, but only after he retired, saying that I am really sorry. I really underestimated you as a person and you as a manager. And he said, I've never met a manager that has listened to the people that he works with for so long to understand where they come from. Because this is also a key thing for me. That's what motivates people. You listen to them, you understand their philosophy and their way of thinking, and then you go with it. The same way as they have to go with yours, you have to go with theirs. It's really important. You cannot impose everything all the time. Sometimes you must, but generally it doesn't work like that. And it hasn't for me.
No, I mean, that's the really valid point. I mean, it's a good story as well, because it's not always obvious, his perception was judge a book by its cover. Don't judge a book by its cover, and that's something outside of your control. However, by your behaviors, by your understanding, by putting the time and the effort in, you were able to then make him change his mind and provide that influence. And I think that's a really good one to finish on. And I think it's a really poignant one of, you can do all the best things in the world, hopefully you start from a good point, but if you don't, you still keep doing the same things, still keep doing the right things, and you will get those outputs and results. And I think that's a really good one to finish on. Actually, I'd like that.
They will
that's
come.
really
I can
good.
guarantee
Yeah.
they will come.
Mm.
It's only if that person doesn't like working will they not come. But I honestly have not met many people that, when you motivate them properly, don't do their job. So most of them do jump up to the occasion and do rise to the challenge once they understand why, and once you've motivated them properly and show them that you've understood also their issues and how they look at things.
Yeah. No, that's a really nice way to finish today. And I think, look, from my side, I can only just, again, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much today. I think there's been some really great things we've discussed. I hope the listeners have, really enjoyed this and taken it all on board. And as I said at the start, please do like and share this episode, and please do subscribe to the channel for this and other great conversations. And again, thanks so much for your time today. And you and I will obviously speak again offline soon. And yeah, thanks again to you in the audience, and wish everyone a great day. Thanks a lot for your time.
Thank you everyone for watching.